Welcome back to our mini-series on understanding and mitigating the risk of internet-connected industrial systems. My name is Joel Angel. I'm the founder of the Industrial Control Systems Cybersecurity Institute and also the founder of the popular website SCADAhacker.com. I'm joined with Phoenix Contact as we celebrate National Cybersecurity Awareness Month with a mini-series on how we're looking at a real-world case assessment of what happened when somebody's system was connected to the internet and they did not realize it was in fact the case. So as you remember in the previous mini-series episode, we talked about how we were going to connect and collect data. So I let this data collect for 7 days. I went back to the site, put the system back in service the way it was before I started, and was absolutely shocked by what we found. Over that 7-day period, I found over 3,100 unique IP addresses of people from around the world that were trying to and sometimes succeeded in accessing this control system. That is alarming. Now again, remember, very small system, very important process that it was running, but this risk was never known before this was put in service. The OEM pre-packaged everything, said that it would be easy, seamless to get this up and running. Well, no one ever expected this would happen. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take all this data and we're going to use some data analysis tools so that we can find out exactly what was going on. So we want to extract attribution, if possible, of those who could be the potential actors in this case. 3,100 unique addresses, so there's a lot of potential there. Then what we want to do is leverage threat intelligence to evaluate those actors. I want to know if they're script kiddies that are playing around, not really knowing what they got into, or if it's more sophisticated actors that knew what those targets were and knew how to potentially exploit them. We're also going to use this threat intelligence to evaluate the capability of the actors. And that helps us to determine intent of what they were trying to do. And then finally, we're going to look at how we're going to evaluate the overall extent of the breach. So what we do is we're going to do 3 different phases of this particular data analysis. The first one will establish flow data information where we can get geolocation on where these IP addresses exist in the world. The next thing is I'm going to look at some of the sessions that were created as part of these different actors and understand what they were doing in terms of credentials and file management. And finally, we're going to look at application data and start to think at how these particular actors could have been manipulating the assets that were available on site. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a variety of open source tools shown on the right. And we'll walk through each one a little bit in this mini-series episode to kind of explain how they're used. To begin with, when I took those 3,100 and I ran them through a little offline tool, this is a Splunk map that shows the distribution of those people that had attempted attacks on this machine. Now realize that of the 3,100, not all of them actually created an active session. So they would not show up on this heat map. These are the people that actually created a connection that was lived past the TCP three-way handshake. As you can see, there are a lot of regions on this map that are known for possessing hostile actors that should raise serious concern of what they're doing. Most importantly, what their intent is, but also what are the possible consequences of their action. So very simple, I ran this data in through Splunk and it created that just based on the packet capture data with the IP address alone. Now, what I really wanted to do is filter this down into where the actual adversaries existed. Now I'm going to explain how I did that in a couple of minutes, but this is the end result. How I was able to take a gross listing of IP addresses and then provide some threat intelligence to determine if these were considered hostile or casual. So this is where I used an open source tool developed by the National Security Agency called Grassmarlin. Grassmarlin's nice because what it does is it provides flow information. which means I can see which IP addresses are talking to other IP addresses, because that's going to be important to see how they were interacting with the particular industrial system that was supplied on the ground. And it's kind of nice because it also can do a basic geolocation for you as well. Next to each IP address listed is a map, or a flag that shows you the country of origin for that particular IP address. So now let's zoom in on the control system. In particular, it's a very small system. Remember, it had a wireless modem, it had a PLC, a CMOR panel, and my computer was used to make sure that everything was operational before I left the site, because it was a little bit remote, so it took me time. So when I commissioned the data collection mechanism, I wanted to make sure everything worked satisfactorily. So you can see on this diagram where I show where I am, both at site and when I would go back to my hotel and check on progress. Now what's very interesting is the PLC and how you actually see from this flow information foreign IP addresses that are not authorized accessing the PLC. Now this is very alarming, and this was something that when I notified the client, we immediately had to prepare a plan in order to prevent this from happening. Because with that capability, someone could go in with the proper tools and actually attempt to reprogram that PLC. So this is a really quick, very easy way to provide flow information and some idea of where actors are located. Now, I took that data, and what was really interesting was that one person that was establishing a connection with the PLC. This is the data that I was able to pull out of Grass Marlin simply by clicking the address that was shown in that previous slide and looking at what occurred when it was talking across port 44818. Now this represents someone with a little bit more capability than a script kiddie. You need some advanced level of skill in order to take software and create these remote connections over a routed public network. So now we see indicators that this is someone that's probably interested in doing something more than just observing what's going on. Next, I wanted to understand some relationship data, right? So I now move from just simple IP to IP. I want to look at the session data and what exactly was being carried on with these particular interactions. This tool is it's called Network Miner, and it's a wonderful tool. You can take your network packet captures that you collect with Wireshark or T-Shark or TCP dump and import them into this particular tool. What it does is it processes all of that data to create sessions and establish the very important client and server relationship. Because what's important with something like Wireshark is if it doesn't see the three-way handshake, it really cannot tell you who the client is and who the server is. But another nice aspect of Network Miner is that it can also take a look at other attributes of the packets. And what's really useful in this case is there's a passwords tab where you can go in and actually see people when they attempted to log in to either the remote display or the FTP server, because both of those were unencrypted. And what's funny is that if you knew it was a CMOR panel, you could simply go do a quick query on the CMOR panel from Automation Direct and find what the default passwords were. So when you go through this list, again, there's a lot of people that are guessing and trying to just brute force the password, but there are people in here that actually did find and use the correct password. Again, showing some sign of intent. So, we've got an idea of the data. We've seen that we've got some form of risk with motive and intent. Now, in our next session, we're actually going to start to determine what these actors were doing and how they were attempting to do it. So I thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon in our next mini-series episode. Thank you.